Hey y'all, I want to chat with you about something I really wrestled with during the early stages of my faith deconstruction journey, and that is having this Stockholm Syndrome type relationship with God. And I know that sounds crazy, but just let me explain. I know what it's like to want to love God with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul, sort of like King David did. But you're doing so while simultaneously carrying this fear that if you question too much, if you get something wrong, or if you hesitate in your faith, even for a moment, God may take his spirit away, remove his blessing, or withdraw his love from you. And that fear runs deep when you've grown up reading stories like Lot's wife being turned into a pillar of salt just for looking back, or Abraham being asked to kill his son to prove his loyalty, or Moses losing access to the promised land. After all he did, he disobeyed like this major time and no entry, right? So it's no wonder so many of us have spent our lives trying to get right with God, right? After internalizing all of that. But here's a question I had to ask myself, and I want to gently ask you too. Is it possible that what you've been calling righteousness, faithfulness, and obedience has sometimes been more performative than personal, more about avoiding God's wrath than responding to God's love? Have your actions truly come from intimacy, or have they come from fear? And if God were walking among us today, right, not Jesus, but like God in the flesh, and he behaved in the ways that we've been taught he behaves in some of these Bible stories, how might that make you feel differently about God's character? Those were the kinds of questions that cracked open the door for me in my spiritual journey. And for a long time, I felt too ashamed to ask them or even admit them to myself privately. And I assumed that because I had those questions, I must not be holy enough. I'm not wise enough. I wasn't anointed enough to really know God. So I often would hand over my authority and all the heavy lifting to the spiritual leaders, the pastors, the elders, the theologians, because I thought they were closer to God than I could ever be. But what I've learned is that asking honest questions is not the same as losing your faith. And actually, it might be how you finally find your faith. And if you've ever sat in that tension, then Looking for God in All the Spaces is the book that I wrote exactly from living in that liminal space. It's not about turning away from God, which is what a lot of people tend to think when you are going through faith deconstruction. All wrong. But it's more about trusting that real love can withstand real questions. And if God is an infinite God, then God can show up and communicate in an infinite number of ways and can meet you where you are in those questions. Looking for God in All the Spaces is available right now in paperback and Kindle formats on Amazon. Be blessed.